I'm Jim Wiley. I'm Director of the Strategic Studies Programmes at the University of Aberdeen. I've been doing this now for nearly 40 years. The programme actually began before I arrived. The programme is about 50 years old, one of the longest strategic studies programmes in the UK and in Europe. The Strategic Studies programme examines fundamentally the use of force and the use of coercion between states. And when I say use of force, I don't mean actually physically using force. Much of the analysis is in the threat of force and how force or the threat of force can be manipulated to achieve political ends. Now, all states are in a condition of political competition. Usually they do not resort to the threats of force or the actual use of force, but it's often there in the background. There may be occasions when indeed they have to bring the use of force or coercion into play. Now, hopefully, if it comes to, for example, deterrence, then force is not actually used. But as we've seen frequently in international affairs, now and in history, then force is often used. And this is about the study of it and the outcomes of it. In the news at the moment, then we will be studying, for example, the Russian intervention in Syria, what drove Russia to intervene in Syria, its impact on the balances of power in the Middle East, and what the outcomes have been of that Russian intervention. We shall also be looking at issues such as the great power competition in the South China Sea, which has been a feature of international politics a lot in recent years. Also, we'll be looking, for example, at the developments in American strategic doctrine under the Trump administration and contrasting that with previous administrations. The condition of European security, the impact, for example, of Britain leaving the European Union, would also be a subject of study. These are contemporary issues. Historically, of course, the Cold War throws up all kinds of issues, but we're not restricted just to the last 50 or 60 years. One can look back at the Great War, at the Napoleonic era, and even a way back to ancient times, to the competition between Athens and Sparta 2,000 years ago. But one of the great features of the past 30 years since the Cold War ended has been the increase in economic activity and indeed the increase in prosperity across the whole of the international system. There's now probably 3 or 4 billion people who were not particularly prosperous before the end of the Cold War, who are now on a rising trajectory of prosperity. Now, in competition between businesses, an awful lot of strategy is used, be they international businesses or indeed national businesses. An appreciation of having clear objectives and then how you gather your capabilities to address these objectives introduces a parallel between how companies operate and indeed how states operate. Now, in this great period of rising prosperity, states have still been in competition. They've been in competition in all the regions of the world. The strategies they develop are very important to the outcome of business activity in these parts of the world. Looking at it more operationally, then what you'll see is that the kind of negotiating skills that states require often mirror those that businesses require. The kind of management techniques that large business organizations deploy, be they oil companies, or be they digital companies, or be they motor car companies, resemble the management techniques in large defence ministries, large foreign offices, large international institutions, such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or OPEC, or other such organizations. So there is that vital synergy and interface between the techniques and the methods of the business world in the international arena and indeed the more traditional strategic and security world. The strategic studies programs, which includes strategic studies and management, but also strategic studies and energy security and strategic studies in international law, and just a straight strategic studies program, welcomes students from a variety of backgrounds. The study of strategy is multidisciplinary. It concerns history, of course, it concerns political science, it concerns international relations, it concerns economics, it concerns business studies, it concerns increasingly so computer science, and also the natural sciences. Throughout my time, that's coming up for 40 years of running the programme, it's been a delight to see many of the graduates go off into excellent careers and to rise very high in their chosen professions. And I'm talking now about people who've gone on to become ambassadors, they've gone on to be senior members of universities, they've gone on to be senior members of international corporations, banking, for example. Thinking about banking, then what we find is that in the risk assessment offices of the major banks, strategic studies students are very welcome. In international insurance companies, they're very welcome. This is not because they're going to be dealing with insuring motor cars or people's houses, but if you remember that a super tanker laden with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of oil is leaving the Persian Gulf, coming through the Strait of Hormuz and heading for Rotterdam, it has to be insured. And it's insured for every kilometre it travels. And the insurance rates differ according to which part of the world that tanker finds itself in. And strategic studies people have the skills to advise the insurance brokers as to the degree of risk that there may be for that supertanker, or indeed for a truck leaving Munich and heading for Uzbekistan, carrying some very valuable material. It has to be insured. There are also, of course, private companies, especially based in London, but you'll find them also in Washington, New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, who by contract provide these kind of services to large corporations and also to governments themselves. And these companies can provide not just physical assistance on the ground, but they also provide desk-based research assistance to governments and to international businesses. In the media world, there are many strategic studies graduates, and of course in governments as well, in the various activities of governments, the armed forces, the foreign offices, the defence ministries, and the supporting intelligence agencies. So there's a wide array of careers there, and there is that wonderful track record of people rising often to very high heights. And a very attractive feature is that sometimes they send their children. I've had more than one son or daughter of students that I had 25, 30 years ago. And these former students are now very senior in their own societies. Any student with a great interest in strategic studies or strategic studies in any of the joint programmes should come to Aberdeen because we adopt a very realistic approach to the study of the uses of force, coercion, and the related disciplines. It's a real-world approach, focusing for our case studies on real-world activities. The study of strategic studies and management is quite unique to Aberdeen, and likewise strategic studies and energy security. There are no other programmes of strategic studies and management or strategic studies and energy security elsewhere in the UK or indeed in Europe. So these are quite unique. And of course at Aberdeen we have the heritage of strategic studies. We have an excellent business school that provides the modules for the management part of that joint programme. And of course, in terms of energy, then Aberdeen is of course the oil capital of Europe, and there's great energy expertise in the university as well.